Quite often people ask me how I wrote my book, Befriending Bipolar, and this video is all about that. If you're interested in writing a lived experience book, I'm going to be giving you lots of hints and tips. Now, obviously, I found my own way, and I'm sure you will find your own way too, but you might find some of these tips and tricks and tips, you might find them useful. So here are my tips and tricks on how to write a lived experience book for yourself. Number one, particularly at the start, don't edit, just write. It's so easy to get perfectionistic and to write the introduction again and again and again and again, probably throwing away some really brilliant introductions. But remember, you can always come back to the editing. I actually wrote my book many times and went over it again and again until I was happy with it. So don't worry about getting great writing out there the first time. Just write, see what you create. So top tip number 2, don't take your book or yourself too seriously. It's really easy when we get passionate about something or we think something's really important, we're sharing our heart, we're sharing our journey. This is seriously important stuff. And it is important. It's very important that you write the book that you want to write, but it's not so important that it stresses you out or stops you from enjoying your life as best as you can. It's one thing to want to be finished with a project, but it's another thing to be committed to actually enjoying the process and to let the process unfold of its own accord. And that takes practice. I'll give you a funny story about this. Every so often when I was writing, I used to dress up in a smart tweed jacket and smart trousers and very nice polished shoes. And I would go to the Hotel Bristol, which is a very posh hotel in Oslo. And I would order a hot chocolate and I would write. And it made me feel like a writer, to dress up in my uniform. And it also made me laugh and take myself less seriously because it was kind of like writing was becoming more of a game. And so I did that and it helped me a lot, particularly if I was getting a bit frustrated with the book or where it was going. When I dressed up and went out for a hot chocolate, then it somehow sort of changed the energy. So that's quite fun. Go with the flow. Don't force it. It's easy to get impatient with ourselves. It's easy to try and reach the goal of finishing a book without even really thinking about enjoying the writing process. It's easy to become perfectionistic and to get frustrated if things aren't going the way I want them to, or as quickly as I think they should be, or to be self-critical and just look at my writing and think, oh, this isn't great, Now, the cool thing about going with the flow is that you're more likely to maintain a natural openness to your writing and also to receive little help from the universe. So, for example, sometimes I would be writing a section on sleep and I'd get stuck. I wouldn't know what to do. And then all of a sudden, someone would talk to me about some experience they'd had with sleep, or they'd remind me of something that I'd gone through, and then the writing would continue. Help usually comes at the right time. It doesn't necessarily come exactly when we want it. So a bit of patience can be very useful. Whether you have a mental illness or not, you deserve to have a good life, and you deserve to have opportunities, and you deserve to be happy. And sometimes writing a book can be a real key to achieving all those things. One of the cool things that happened to me was that as I started writing, all this stuff started to pour out of me that I had completely forgotten about, and a lot of it was emotional in a way that I kind of thought I got over. So, for example, I was very angry about some of the advice that I'd had around bipolar, which I felt had pushed me deeper into the illness. And so I wrote. I didn't edit what I thought. I didn't think, oh, I can't say this or I can't say that. I just wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And some of what I wrote was really angry and really surprised me how strongly I felt. But what was really good was that once I'd written this, once I sort of got it out of my system and chatted to my wife about it and kind of processed it, then I was able to rewrite that chapter, but from a much more balanced perspective, seeing many sides of the story rather than just my own sort of what I would call victim story, if I'm honest. That was really helpful, because one of the things that a lot of people say about Befriending Bipolar is that it's very fair, it's a very balanced book. And that was always important to me. I'm not so interested in throwing people under the bus, even though initially I thought perhaps they deserved it. But once I'd processed it, and I kind of realised that everyone at their own level is doing their best, we all make mistakes, things happen, then it was much easier for me to actually write a chapter that could help people. And so this leads to the next point, which I think is really important. Don't throw anyone under the bus. You know, when you're writing about really personal stuff, and particularly mental illness, it's very easy to blame people for certain things. It's easy to blame, well, I'm not going to go into it, but when you get to your final sort of draft, you don't want to be making other people's life worse and publicly telling other people with names and stuff like that what you think people have done wrong to you or what you think has gone wrong. I just don't think that's a cool way to live. You can still talk about the way you feel you were treated unfairly, but you don't need to give names. I just don't think that's cool. And if I read a book like that, I wouldn't have a lot of respect for the person who'd done it. We want to help people. We don't want to spread bitterness, you know, particularly our own. And I guess to tie up this point, when you get close to publishing, when you're getting your book edited, getting an editor is really important. Even if it's a friend or family member. You know, I couldn't afford a proper editor, so I got my wife, who did the most amazing job. And I think it was 4 friends proofread my book, and they did an amazing job too. So when you get to the end, that's when you need to take into account this point. And that is, be discerning about what you put out into public. Once you've published your book, you never know what's going to happen, you know, and so you want to be able to stand by what you've published. You don't want to be revealing loads of horrible or juicy or sensitive stuff about other people. You don't necessarily want to reveal everything about yourself. There were certain things that I experienced and that happened to me that I don't want to share in public, primarily because I don't need to get my message across, but also because I don't want to hurt other people. So that's something worth bearing in mind, that once it's published, you might not be able to bring it back. One of the best policies when writing a book about this kind of thing is to be honest. If you're honest about what you've experienced and how you feel, if you're honest about your strengths and your weaknesses, if you are just humble and honest, you're going to write a better book. I didn't write Befriending Bipolar to try and convince people of my ideas. I wrote it because I thought that by sharing what I'd experienced, it might help other people. And there are some people who've read the book who I'm sure it has helped, and there are some people who probably got nothing from it and stopped reading after 5 pages because they were bored out of their brains. But again, there's something about being honest that in some ways makes you kind of invulnerable, and it makes people relate to what you say a lot more, and people can sense it, you know. On a more practical note, I used summaries at the end of each chapter so that people could just skim through the book and get the main points. And when I did this, I primarily thought about doctors. I thought, I can't imagine there's loads of doctors want to read a book about bipolar from cover to cover. And so I thought, you know, if I have the main points listed at the end of each chapter, that could be helpful. And they could just take a scan and see if there's anything that interests them, and then they can read that chapter specifically if they want to. So the next top tip, writing is a journey and not a destination. If you're not enjoying the journey, no matter how good the destination, I'm not convinced. And will you even have a good destination if you're not enjoying writing? Probably not. I mean, I do think for a lot of people, particularly writing about their own story, it's a labour of love, you know? And it's not something you can necessarily just churn out in a couple of months or follow some format and it all works out well. It is a journey, and you're going to have your own journey with it. And you're probably going to grow by writing the book. You're going to learn things about yourself. You're going to learn things about other people. You're going to see certain events in your life from different perspectives. It's a very, very cool thing, and something that I think is there to be experienced and enjoyed rather than perfected and finished as soon as you can. You know, in today's world, so many of us, we're so fixated in results, you know. It starts from when we're at school, for goodness sake. We're so fixated with results that we don't naturally think that it's that important to enjoy what we're doing. I mean, it's a bonus, it's nice if we do, but it's not that important, as long as I get a good result. I'm not sure it works like that with a book. I think the more you enjoy the journey, probably the better the book will be. Something that can be very helpful is to split the book into sections, because then it's less overwhelming when you're writing. So I think in Befriending Bipolar, I think I've got about like 17 chapters, all of which have a very clear title and all of which have a slightly different message and cover bipolar from a different kind of angle. That was super helpful because I could just focus on, for example, the chapter of what's it like to be depressed, and I could write it and leave it. And then later, when I wanted to come back to it, maybe I'd discovered something new or I'd read some facts about depression I wanted to put in, but I had that section there. Okay, this is the depression section. So I found that really helpful. And the next top tip is don't overthink it and don't think too much about your audience. A real tendency when I was writing was to think, you know, will people like this? How will they react to this? We don't know. People are very, very, very different, and we really don't know what people will like. And one thing's for sure, some people are going to love your book and some people are not. So what I decided to do was to write a book that I really enjoyed, because then at least I know some people are going to like it, you know? So that can be really helpful, not to over-focus on your audience. And the next tip, which is a really good one and one that you'll probably relate to, is be brave. If you're sharing parts of your own life and some not so nice experiences and things you've learned, the way you perceive things, you've got to be brave to do that. It's not for the faint-hearted. There are going to be some people who really appreciate what you write and some people who get nothing from it and maybe even react negatively to it. You know what they say, one of my favourite sayings is fortune favours the brave. And even if you just have a really good go at writing a book, I think that takes a certain level of bravery. And if you put it out there to the world, that's a brave thing to do. So be brave, be strong. You can do it. Life is unpredictable, and we never know what's around the corner. So to be brave and do something that you believe in, something that you want to do, something that potentially helps others, that can't be too bad, can it? Yeah, one of the things that my wife pointed out to me that's really helpful is that writing and editing are completely different things. So when you write, you don't need to worry too much about what you're writing, because it will change as you go on and it will change with being edited. So don't worry about those perfectionist grooves, just get going, do your best and stay open, and it will all evolve. We are usually our own worst critics. So don't listen to that thought in your head that tells you to give up, that tells you you're no good at writing or no one will want to read this. Just keep going, write a book, enjoy the process as much as you can. If you've got the intention to help people and to make the world a better place, that's even better. Now, to put this into perspective, when I wrote Befriending Bipolar, I was not in a good cognitive shape at all. I was on a very high dose of lithium. I couldn't remember anything really. I couldn't remember what I'd just written. I never had a sort of personal overview of the whole book because I just couldn't remember what I'd written. But I got lots of help and I was open to help. And I think that's one of the most important messages of this whole video, is that when we decide we're going to do something and we have a good intention, then it's amazing how help appears. And you never know what a book will lead to. You know, after I published Befriending Bipolar, I won the Bazooki Fresh Start Award, which is incredibly helpful. I've been offered talks and podcast interviews, and I've even started kind of a career in mental health, studying psychology of mental health at Edinburgh University, a master's in that. So a lot of things can happen, but perhaps one of the most satisfying things that's happened is that people quite often write to me and tell me what a difference Befriending Bipolar made to their life. And I think the reason it makes a difference is because I was authentic in the way I wrote it, and I don't have an agenda. I don't necessarily think that my way is the right way. I think that my way is a way. And so I share what I share in the book, but it's up to the individual to do what they think is right and to have their own journey with their mental illness, and also with writing a book if that's what you choose to do. I think the final thing that I want to say, the final tip, is this is your book. This is your process. I've shared some of the things that worked for me and some that didn't work for me, but you're going to be different to me. You're going to find things that work brilliantly for you that are totally different, and that's terrific. That's, in my opinion, the best way to do it. If you are interested in getting a bit more help with writing your book, primarily just in being supported, encouraged, and me throwing a bit of my experience your way, then I do writing coaching. Do get in touch. You can do this. You can write that book. Yeah, and you can have fun doing it. Good luck. If you're interested in knowing about the silver linings that I've experienced with bipolar, sort of the good things that have come from a horrible illness, then please click on this video and it'll take you straight there. Have a wonderful day and good luck with your book. You can definitely do it.